My name is Megan Carter. I'm 32. Last Thanksgiving at 6:47 p.m., I was standing in my parents' kitchen holding a ceramic bowl of mashed potatoes while my sister told 12 family members that my entire military career was basically pretend. I mean, come on, Ashley said, her wine glass catching the overhead light as she gestured at me. Megan isn't the kind of military people picture when they say the word soldier. She works indoors, at a desk, never talks about what she does, acts all mysterious about it like she's in some spy movie. She laughed, the kind of laugh that invites others to join. It's not exactly out there doing what you used to do, right, Marcus? Marcus was her boyfriend. Former Army Ranger. Actual combat veteran with actual scars and actual stories he could actually tell. He shifted uncomfortably on the sectional sofa, his beer bottle making wet rings on my mother's coaster. I set the bowl down carefully on the granite counter. My hands didn't shake. I'd learned that trick 8 years ago during my first threat assessment briefing, when a colonel told me that 17 lives depended on whether I could spot a pattern in radio chatter within the next 4 hours. You learn to keep your hands steady when people's heartbeats depend on your eyesight. Ashley, I said quietly, can we not do this right now? Do what? Her eyes went wide with practiced innocence. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You wear a uniform sometimes, sure, but it's not like you've ever been deployed. You've never even left Virginia. My father cleared his throat from his recliner, not to defend me, just to signal discomfort. My mother stood at the stove, stirring gravy that didn't need stirring, her back to all of us. That's not actually, I started. Oh, here we go, Ashley cut in. The mysterious classified stuff you can't talk about. She made air quotes with one hand, nearly sloshing Pinot Grigio onto my mother's cream carpet. So convenient that you can't ever prove what you do is real. Marcus set his beer down. Ash, maybe. No, I want to know. She turned to face me fully, and I saw it then. The thing I'd been seeing since we were kids. That flash of something cold behind her eyes whenever anyone paid attention to me instead of her. What do you actually do all day, Megan? File papers? Answer phones? Send emails about supply requests? My Uncle Jim laughed from the dining table. My Aunt Carol looked at her plate. My cousin Derek scrolled on his phone pretending he couldn't hear. I could feel my pulse in my teeth, the familiar burn spreading across my cheekbones, but I'd been trained for hostile interrogations. This was just Thanksgiving. I analyze intelligence data, I said. My voice came out flat, professional. I identify patterns that indicate potential threats to U.S. personnel and operations. I assess risk levels and recommend tactical adjustments. Ashley blinked at me, then she smiled. So, you read reports? Among other things, yes. Wow. She took a long sip of wine. Thank you for your service, Meg. Really. All those reports you read. True American hero. This time, 3 people laughed. My father's brother, my mother's sister, Derek, who'd never served anything but himself. I picked up my phone from the counter. My hands were steady. I'm going to head out. Oh, come on. My mother finally turned around, wooden spoon in hand, her face creased with that familiar expression that meant I was the one making things difficult. It's Thanksgiving. Ashley was just teasing. It didn't sound like teasing, I said. You're too sensitive, my father added, not looking up from the football game. You always have been. Marcus stood up. His jaw was tight. Actually, I don't think... Marcus, sit down, Ashley said sweetly. She linked her arm through his when he hesitated. Megan's just upset because she knows I'm right. If she actually did anything important, she'd be able to talk about it. Real soldiers don't hide behind classifications. I looked at my sister, really looked at her highlighted hair and her Kate Spade dress and her practiced smile, at the way she positioned herself in front of Marcus like a shield, at the way she'd spent 28 years needing to be the center of every room we'd ever shared. I'll be going now, I said. Megan, please, my mother said, but she didn't move toward me, didn't put down the spoon, didn't ask Ashley to apologize. I grabbed my coat from the closet by the front door. As I was putting it on, I heard Ashley's voice carry from the living room. "She'll be back. She always comes back. Where else does she have to go?" I closed the door quietly behind me. It was 7:03 p.m. The temperature had dropped to 34 degrees. My Civic was parked between my father's Silverado and Ashley's leased Audi. I sat in the driver's seat for 11 minutes before I could make my hand stop shaking enough to put the key in the ignition. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. Let me take you back 14 years to when I was 18, and Sergeant First Class Daniel Reeves handed me my first challenge coin. I'd just finished advanced individual training for intelligence analysis, top of my class. Not because I was smarter than everyone else, but because I'd learned early that being invisible had advantages. You see more when people forget you're watching. Sergeant Reeves called me into his office on the last Friday before graduation. His desk was covered in operations maps and briefing folders marked with red classification stamps. The office smelled like black coffee and the particular kind of paper that only exists in military buildings, thick, slightly yellow, resistant to creases. "Sit down, Carter," he said. I sat. My boots were so polished I could see the fluorescent lights reflected in the leather. "You know what this is?" He held up a bronze coin about the size of a silver dollar. It had an eagle on one side and a motto I couldn't read from where I sat. "A challenge coin, Sergeant. Not just any coin." He set it on the desk between us. "This one's from the commander of Special Operations Command. He gave it to me after an operation in 2001, Helmand Province. Our team was 30 clicks into hostile territory when we got word that our extraction route had been compromised. We would have walked right into an ambush if someone back at headquarters hadn't caught an anomaly in intercepted communications. Some analysts noticed that the same call sign kept appearing in chatter from 3 different locations within a 6-hour window. Didn't make sense geographically. Turned out it was a coordinated setup. They were waiting for us." He pushed the coin across the desk toward me. "That analyst saved 11 lives that day, Carter, including mine. And you know what? I never knew their name, never saw their face. They did their job in a room without windows, without glory, without anyone ever thanking them. But they're the reason I'm sitting here today. The reason I got to meet my daughter when she was born 3 months later." I stared at the coin. "I'm giving this to you," he said, "because I think you understand something most people don't. The most important battles aren't always the ones with guns. Sometimes they're fought with spreadsheets and pattern recognition and the ability to stay focused when everyone else has gone home. Sometimes the real courage is doing the right thing when no one will ever know you did it." I picked up the coin. It was heavier than I expected. "Thank you, Sergeant. Thank you, Carter, for choosing this path, for understanding that service comes in many forms, for being willing to be invisible so that others can be seen." I kept that coin in my pocket for 6 years, through 3 deployments to analysis centers, through hundreds of briefings, through the night in 2019, when I identified a pattern in enemy communications that led to the successful extraction of a pinned-down special operations team in the Eastern Corridor, through the morning in 2021 when I received a classified commendation for threat assessment work that prevented a vehicle-borne IED from reaching a convoy carrying 18 soldiers. Through every family gathering where Ashley told anyone who would listen that my job wasn't real military work. The coin was in my pocket the night I got the call about the dinner. It was a Tuesday in late November, 3 weeks after that Thanksgiving disaster. My mother's voice on the phone was tight with forced cheerfulness. "We're having a family dinner this Saturday," she said. "Nothing big, just us and Ashley and Marcus and your Aunt Linda and Uncle Jim. Your father wants everyone together before the holidays get too crazy." "I don't think that's a good idea," I said. I was in my apartment in Alexandria, sitting on my secondhand couch with my laptop open to a threat assessment report I'd been reviewing. The document was marked "Secret" in red letters across the top. I'd been staring at communications intercepts for 4 hours. My eyes felt like sandpaper. "Megan, you can't avoid your sister forever." "I'm not avoiding her. I'm choosing not to spend time with people who think my career is a joke. She doesn't think that. She was just making fun of me in front of a dozen people. Yeah, I noticed. My mother sighed. The kind of sigh that meant I was being difficult. Again. You know how Ashley is. She doesn't mean anything by it. She's just expressive. Expressive, I repeated. Marcus feels terrible about the whole thing. He wants to apologize. That got my attention. Marcus wants to apologize? Well, Ashley mentioned that he felt bad, and I think it would be good for you to hear it, to clear the air. I looked at my laptop screen, at the rows of data I'd been cross-referencing, at the pattern I'd been tracking for 3 days that suggested a possible security breach at a forward operating base, at the work that mattered but that I could never, ever talk about. What time? I asked. 6 o'clock. And Megan, please don't make a scene. I hung up. Then I sat there for a long time, holding my phone, wondering why I kept doing this to myself. The dinner was at my parents' house. Same cream carpet, same granite counters, same sectional sofa where Ashley and Marcus had sat 3 weeks ago while she'd dismantled my dignity piece by piece. I arrived at 5:58 p.m. My mother answered the door in her holiday apron, the one with embroidered snowflakes. She hugged me quickly, the kind of hug that's more about checking off a box than actual affection. "Everyone's in the living room," she said. "We're waiting on Aunt Linda. She's bringing her famous cranberry sauce." I walked into the living room. My father was in his recliner, remote in hand. Uncle Jim was on the sofa with a beer. Ashley was perched on the armchair by the window, her legs crossed at the ankle, wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Marcus stood by the fireplace, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. And next to Marcus, standing with the easy posture of someone who'd spent years in uniform, was a man I didn't recognize. "Megan!" Ashley's voice had that bright, brittle quality that meant she was performing. "You remember I told you about Marcus's buddy, right? This is Jake Brennan. They serve together, Rangers. He's in town for a few days, so I invited him to join us. Hope that's okay?" Jake Brennan turned to look at me. He was maybe 35, with close-cropped dark hair going gray at the temples and the kind of quiet alertness that marked men who'd seen things they couldn't forget. His eyes were pale blue. They took me in with a single efficient glance, not checking me out, just cataloging. Threat assessment. "Nice to meet you," he said. His handshake was firm but brief. "You too," I said. "Jake's with the State Department now," Ashley added. Her smile was sharp. "But he did 4 tours overseas. Real deployment. Real combat. Not like some people's desk jobs." The room went quiet. My mother appeared from the kitchen, holding a platter of cheese and crackers. "Ashley, honey, maybe—" "I'm just making conversation," Ashley said innocently. "Jake was telling us about Helmand Province earlier, about being in actual firefights. It's fascinating, isn't it? Hearing from people who are actually there." Jake's jaw tightened. Marcus was staring at his shoes. I sat down on the opposite end of the sofa from my uncle. My coat was still on. The challenge coin was in my right pocket. I could feel its weight against my hip. "Megan works for the military too," my mother said, her voice falsely bright as she set down the cheese platter. "Intelligence." "Oh, right," Ashley said. "The mysterious job she can't talk about." She made air quotes again. "So mysterious, so classified." "It is classified," I said quietly. "Or maybe it's just boring," Ashley said. She took a sip from her wine glass. Already her second, I noticed. "Maybe it's easier to say you can't talk about it than to admit you spend your days in a cubicle reading emails." My father shifted in his recliner. Not to defend me, just to adjust his position. The football pregame show was on. He was pretending to watch. Jake Brennan was looking at me, really looking. Not the way Ashley's boyfriends usually did, like I was a curiosity or an inconvenience. He was looking at me the way analysts look at data, searching for the pattern. "What kind of intelligence work?" he asked. "Threat assessment," I said. "Pattern analysis, communications intercepts, risk evaluation." Desk work, Ashley clarified helpfully. Safe and sound in an office building. Never in danger. Never deployed. Never. Ashley. Marcus's voice was sharp. Stop. She turned to him with wide eyes. What? I'm just being honest. Megan's always acting like her job is so important and so secret, but let's be real. If it was actually important, she'd be able to tell us something about it. Real soldiers don't hide. That's not how classification works, Jake said quietly. Everyone looked at him. Classification, he repeated. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. When you work with sensitive information, you don't get to talk about it. Not to your family, not to your friends, not to anyone without clearance. That's not hiding. That's operational security. Ashley's smile tightened. Well, sure, but… There's no but, Jake interrupted. Either you understand OPSEC or you don't. And if you don't, you probably shouldn't be commenting on someone else's service. The temperature in the room dropped by 10 degrees. My Aunt Linda arrived at 6:14 p.m. with her cranberry sauce and a frantic story about traffic on I-95. My mother ushered everyone to the dining table. I ended up seated between my uncle and Jake Brennan, directly across from Ashley. The meal started quietly, passing dishes, small talk about the weather. My father said something about the Redskins. My uncle complained about his HOA. Then Ashley leaned forward, her elbows on the table, her wine glass in hand. So, Jake, she said brightly, what do you think about people who claim to be military but have never actually seen combat? Marcus closed his eyes. My mother froze with a serving spoon halfway to her plate. I think, Jake said slowly, that combat is only one type of service, and often not the most important type. Really? Ashley's eyebrows went up. Because I've always thought that actual soldiers, the ones who carry guns and risk their lives, are the real heroes, not the people who sit safely at home and pretend they're doing something dangerous. I set down my fork, very carefully. My hands were steady. Ashley, I said, why are you like this? Like what? She blinked at me, innocent. I'm just asking questions. I'm just curious why you insist on wearing your uniform to family events and putting military stickers on your car when you've never actually… I've been in the military for 14 years, I said. My voice was level, quiet. The voice I used in briefing rooms when I had to deliver threat assessments to people who outranked me by 10 grades. I've held a top-secret/SCI clearance for 11 of those years. I've worked on operations in 3 different theaters. I've provided intelligence support to special operations forces, infantry divisions, and executive-level decision-makers. And you're right, I can't tell you the details, not because I'm pretending, because it's illegal. But you've never been deployed, Ashley pressed. You've never been in actual danger. Jake Brennan shifted in his seat. I felt him turn to look at me, saw his eyes drop to my left wrist, where my sleeve had ridden up slightly, where my military ID badge was visible on its lanyard, the badge I'd forgotten I was wearing, the badge with my photo and my rank and my unit designation, 525th Military Intelligence Brigade. Jake Brennan went completely still. His beer glass stopped halfway to his mouth. His face changed, not dramatically, but I saw it. The way his pupils widened slightly, the way his breath caught for just a fraction of a second. What unit did you say you're with? He asked. His voice had changed too. It wasn't casual anymore. I didn't say, I replied. He was still staring at my badge. Then his eyes moved to my face, sharp, focused, like he was looking at a ghost. 525 MIB, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. I nodded once. Eastern Corridor, he said. Spring 2019. Operation Falcon Echo. The room had gone silent. Everyone was staring at us now. Even my father had muted the TV. Ashley was frowning. What's your specialty code? Jake asked me. His hands had flattened on the table. He wasn't blinking. 35 November, I said. Signals intelligence analyst. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Then louder. Jesus Christ! Marcus was sitting up straight now. Jake, what? Jake wasn't looking at him. He was reaching into his jacket pocket, His hand was shaking slightly. He pulled out a challenge coin, old, worn, the bronze dulled from years of handling, and set it on the table in front of me. I recognized it immediately. The eagle, the motto, the same coin Sergeant Reeves had given me 14 years ago. "Do you know what this is from?" Jake asked. "Special Operations Command," I said. "Eastern Theater." "Do you know what happened in the Eastern Corridor in spring of 2019? I said nothing. Classified information doesn't become unclassified just because someone asks. But Jake was already talking. His voice had gone rough. "My team was 6 kilometers from extraction when we got hit. Ambush. We'd been tracking a high-value target for 3 weeks. We thought we had him. We thought we knew his route." He paused, swallowed. "We were wrong, or we would have been. Except someone back at headquarters caught something in the communications data. Some analysts noticed that the same call signs kept appearing in different geographic locations, noticed that the patterns didn't match the target's normal movement profile, noticed that it looked like a setup." He picked up the coin, turned it over in his fingers. "That analyst sent up a red flag 4 hours before we were supposed to move. Convinced command to scrub the mission. Convinced them to route us through an alternate extraction point. We found out later that there were 12 enemy combatants waiting at our original extraction zone. They'd been there for 6 hours. They knew exactly when we were supposed to arrive." Ashley's wine glass had stopped halfway to her mouth. My mother had both hands pressed to her chest. "That analyst saved 7 lives that day," Jake said, "including mine, including Marcus's." He looked at Marcus. "Including yours. You remember? You were on that op. You broke your ankle jumping off that compound wall. You spent 4 days in medical at Bagram." Marcus's face had gone white. That was Falcon Echo?" "That was Falcon Echo," Jake confirmed. He turned back to me. "The after-action report said the threat assessment came from a signals analyst at the 525. It said they'd been tracking the target's communications patterns for 6 weeks. They'd built a predictive model of his movement behaviors. When the intercepts started showing contradictions, they flagged it immediately. They pushed it up the chain despite resistance from field commanders who thought they were being overcautious." He paused. "That was you, wasn't it?" I said nothing. "It was you," he said again. "You're the analyst who saved us." Ashley's face had gone from pale to red. That can't be." "Look at her badge," Jake said flatly. 525 MIB, Signals Intelligence. She's the right rank, the right time frame, the right specialty." He looked at me. "How many operations have you worked?" "I can't answer that," I said. "How many lives have you saved?" "I can't answer that either." "Can you tell me," he said slowly, "if you've received any commendations for your work on Falcon Echo?" I met his eyes. "I can tell you that I received a classified commendation in 2019 for work related to special operations in the Eastern Theater. That's all I can say." Jake leaned back in his chair. He looked at Ashley, then at my parents, then at my uncle. His expression was hard. "This woman," he said, gesturing at me, "has done more for her country in a single 8-hour shift than most people do in their entire lives. She's saved soldiers. Real soldiers. The ones you seem to think are the only ones who count." He looked at Marcus. Tell them about Falcon Echo." Marcus was staring at his plate. His jaw was working. When he spoke, his voice was tight. "We would have died," he said quietly. "All of us. We would have walked right into that kill zone. If someone hadn't caught it..." He stopped, cleared his throat. "I didn't know. I never knew who flagged it. Command doesn't tell you that stuff. They just said the mission was scrubbed. New extraction point. We thought they were being paranoid." "They weren't being paranoid," Jake said. "They were listening to an analyst who knew what she was doing. An analyst who probably hasn't slept more than 4 hours a night for the past 14 years because she's too busy keeping people like us alive." The silence in that dining room was absolute. Ashley's hands were shaking. Her wine glass was on the table, but she'd let go of it, and dark red liquid was spreading across my mother's white tablecloth. She didn't seem to notice. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Of course you didn't know," Jake said. His voice was quiet now, sad. "Because she can't tell you. Because classification exists for a reason. Because some of the most important work in the military happens in rooms you'll never see, by people whose names you'll never know, whose sacrifices you'll never understand." He stood up, picked up his challenge coin, walked around the table to where I was sitting. "This is yours," he said, pressing the coin into my hand. "You've earned it. You earned it 4 years ago. I just didn't know it until now." My fingers closed around the bronze. It was still warm from his pocket. "Thank you for your service," he said. Formal, respectful. Actual service, the kind that matters. Then he turned to Ashley. "You know what the really messed up thing is?" he asked her. His voice was conversational, almost friendly. "I remember that Thanksgiving. Marcus told me about it. Told me his girlfriend's sister was in military intelligence and the girlfriend kept making fun of her for having a desk job." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I told him he should shut that down. Told him that intelligence analysts are the backbone of every successful operation, that they work longer hours than most combat troops, that they carry burdens most soldiers never even know exist." You know what he said? Ashley said nothing. "He said he'd tried. He said you wouldn't listen. He said you needed to feel superior to your sister because—" He stopped, shook his head. "Actually, I'm not going to repeat what he said. It wasn't kind." Marcus had his head in his hands. My mother was crying, quiet tears running down her face, her hand still pressed to her chest. My father had turned off the TV. He was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. "How long?" he asked. His voice cracked on the words. "How long have you been doing this kind of work?" 14 years, I said. "And we never knew." "No." "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I couldn't," I said simply. "And because I tried to, years ago. But every time I mentioned my work, Ashley would make a joke. And you would laugh, or change the subject, or tell me I was too serious. So I stopped trying." I stood up, set my napkin on the table. The challenge coin was heavy in my hand. "I'm going to go now," I said. "Megan, wait." My mother reached for me, but I stepped back. "I need you to understand something," I said. I looked at my mother, then my father, then Ashley. "I have spent 14 years of my life in service to this country. I have worked 80-hour weeks analyzing communications that most people can't even imagine. I have identified threats that would have killed hundreds of people. I have supported operations that saved lives and prevented attacks and made the world marginally safer. And I have done it all in silence. Because that's what the job requires. Because that's what service means." My voice was shaking now. Not with anger, with something else. "I didn't need you to understand the details," I said. "I just needed you to respect that what I was doing mattered. That I mattered. But you couldn't even give me that. You let Ashley tear me down, over and over, because it was easier than standing up to her. Because she's always been the one who needed the attention, the validation, the spotlight." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. She was crying now too, mascara running down her cheeks. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just tired. I'm tired of defending myself to people who should have defended me. I'm tired of being invisible in the places where I should have been seen." I picked up my coat. Jake Brennan walked me to the door. Marcus followed, his movements stiff and guilty. "I'm sorry," Marcus said when we reached the front step. The night air was cold, 39 degrees, clear sky. No stars visible through the light pollution. "I should have shut her down. I should have—" "Yeah," I said. "You should have." He nodded, looked at his feet. Jake handed me a business card. "If you ever need anything," he said. "A reference, a connection, a witness, whatever. You call me. Understand?" I took the card. "Thank you." "No," he said. "Thank you." I drove home in silence. The challenge coin sat in the cup holder next to me. 2 coins now, one from Sergeant Reeves, one from Jake Brennan. 2 pieces of bronze that meant more than my sister's validation ever could. I didn't hear from my parents for 3 days. When my mother finally called, her voice was small. "Your father and I have been talking," she said, "about what happened, about what we didn't know, about what we should have known, or should have asked, or should have." She stopped. I heard her breathing. "We'd like you to come to dinner. Just the 3 of us. No Ashley. We want to understand. We want to hear about your work, as much as you can tell us." "I don't know if I can do that," I said. "Please, Megan, please." I met them the following Saturday at a restaurant I chose. Neutral territory, public space, escape routes. My father looked older than I remembered. My mother's hands shook when she picked up her menu. "We're so sorry," she said. The words came out in a rush. "We didn't understand. We thought you were exaggerating. We thought the secrecy was just an excuse," I finished. "I know. Ashley told me that's what you thought." My father winced. "We should have trusted you. We should have believed that what you were doing mattered." "Yes," I said. "You should have." We sat in silence for a moment. The restaurant was half full, quiet jazz playing, the smell of garlic and olive oil. "Can you tell us anything?" my mother asked. "About what you do? About what you've done?" I thought about that. About what I could and couldn't say. About where the line was between classified and public. About what they deserved to know versus what I was willing to share. "I analyze communications data from hostile actors," I said slowly. "I look for patterns that indicate potential threats to U.S. personnel and operations. When I find something, I write it up in a report and send it up the chain. Sometimes they act on it, sometimes they don't. I don't always know what happens after I hit send." "But sometimes you do," my father said. "Sometimes," I agreed, "like Falcon Echo. Sometimes I hear about operations where my work made a difference. Sometimes I get commendations. Sometimes I just get a nod from my supervisor and another stack of intercepts to review." "How often do you—" My mother stopped, swallowed. "How often do you save people?" I shook my head. "I can't quantify it like that. Every analyst contributes to a larger mission. It's not like combat where you can count the enemies you've neutralized or the friendlies you've extracted. It's more diffuse, more about the threats that didn't happen because someone noticed something and said something." "But you have saved people," my father said. "People like Marcus and Jake." "Yes," I said. "I have." My mother started crying again. Quiet tears, the kind that speak to old regrets and missed opportunities. "We're so proud of you," she whispered. "We should have said that years ago. We should have said it every day, even if we didn't understand what you were doing. We should have trusted that it was important because you said it was important." I wanted to forgive them. I wanted to say it was okay, that it didn't matter, that we could move forward. But I couldn't. Not yet. The wounds were too fresh. The years of mockery and dismissal and invisibility had left scars that wouldn't heal with one apology. "I need time," I said. "I need you to understand that this doesn't just go away because you're sorry. I need to see that you mean it. That you're willing to defend me the next time Ashley starts. That you're willing to set boundaries. That you're willing to choose me sometimes instead of always choosing the path of least resistance." They nodded, both of them, desperate and sincere. "We will," my father said. "Whatever it takes." Ashley called me 6 days later. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out over caution. "I need to apologize," she said. Her voice was subdued, none of the usual brightness. "I need to say that I was wrong. About everything." "Okay," I said. "I was jealous," she continued. The words came out halting, like she was pulling teeth. "I've always been jealous of you. You were the smart one, the disciplined one, the one who actually did something with her life while I was just what?" I asked. Just pretty, she said bitterly. Just the one everyone liked at parties. Just the one with the right clothes and the right hair and the right boyfriend. But it was all surface, all performance. And you had something real, something that mattered, and I couldn't stand it. I didn't know what to say to that. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Ashley said. I don't think I deserve that. I just need you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry. Okay, I said again. Marcus broke up with me, she added. After the dinner. He said he couldn't be with someone who treated family the way I treated you. He said it showed a fundamental character flaw. He said I needed to work on myself before I could be in a healthy relationship. I'm sorry, I said. And I was. Despite everything, despite all the years of cruelty, I was sorry. Because I remembered being kids together. Before the jealousy, before the comparisons. When we'd shared a room and made up stories and laughed at things only we understood. I don't know if we can fix this, Ashley said quietly. I don't know if you want to, but if you're willing to try, I'd like to try. I need time, I said, the same thing I'd told my parents. I need to see that you mean it, that this isn't just guilt talking, that you're willing to change, actually change, not just apologize and then go back to the same patterns. Fair, she said. That's fair. We hung up. I stood by my window looking out at the Alexandria street below. It was getting dark. 5:47 p.m. The streetlights were coming on one by one. 6 months later, I stood in my new apartment in Arlington. 1 bedroom, 7th floor. View of the Potomac if you stood on the balcony and craned your neck. I'd bought a coffee table from IKEA and assembled it myself. I'd adopted a cat from the shelter, a gray tabby with white paws, who I'd named Scout. My father had helped me move, carried boxes up 7 flights of stairs when the elevator broke. Didn't complain, didn't make jokes, just did the work. My mother had stocked my refrigerator with home-cooked meals in Tupperware containers. Lasagna, pot roast, chicken soup. The kind of food that meant love when words felt inadequate. Ashley had sent a card, just a card. Simple white envelope with a note inside. Proud of you. A. I'd put it on my refrigerator, held it there with a magnet shaped like the state of Virginia. I didn't know if we'd ever be close again, sisters in more than name, but it was a start. A small gesture, an acknowledgement that something had shifted. I went back to work, same job, same classified briefings, same long hours reviewing intercepts and building pattern analyses and flagging potential threats. But something felt different now. Lighter. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying until someone helped me set it down. Jake Brennan sent me a LinkedIn message in March. Just checking in, he said, making sure I was doing okay. I replied with a simple thank you. He responded with a photo, him and Marcus at a veterans event, both of them smiling, both of them wearing their challenge coins on lanyards around their necks. Told everyone at the event about the analyst who saved our lives, he wrote. You've got fans. I saved that message, printed it out, put it in a frame on my desk next to my unit citation and my top secret clearance badge. If you're watching this and you've ever been told that your work doesn't matter because it's not visible, I need you to hear something. Visibility is not the same as value. Some of the most important work in the world happens in rooms without windows, by people without names, doing things they can never talk about. That doesn't make it less real. It doesn't make it less significant, it makes it essential. You don't need anyone's permission to have value, but you do need to give yourself permission to walk away from people who refuse to see it. If you've ever had to set a boundary with family because they refused to respect your worth, type, I set the boundary in the comments. Or if you're still working up the courage to do it, type, I'm getting there. Both are valid. Both take strength. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for seeing the value in invisible work. I'm standing on my balcony now. The sun is setting over the Potomac. The water is reflecting orange and pink and gold. Scout is sitting on the railing, tail twitching as she watches birds I can't see. I can hear traffic below, the distant sound of a siren, someone laughing in an apartment nearby. I'm not locked outside in the cold anymore. I'm not standing in a kitchen holding mashed potatoes while someone tears me down. I'm not apologizing for taking up space. I'm just here, in my own apartment, with my own cat, living my own life, doing work that matters to people I'll never meet, and that's enough.